Hello, my name is Paul Chadwell. I'm the National Continuous Improvement Manager for KE Distributors. We distribute natural and organic food to grocery stores. We do about $4 billion in sales every year, and we have 12 distribution centers. As we know, sales volume and the accurate forecasting of future sales volume are vital to any organization, and our company is no different. It is important to acquire new customers and increase our base of sales, but the bottom line of the organization is built off both increase of profits and decrease of costs. Increase of revenues, I should say, and decrease of costs. Accuracy in that sales forecasting can help limit the costs involved in acquisition of any inputs that are needed to satisfy the customer's requirements. So think about it in layman's terms. If you know what you're going to need from the grocery store ahead of time and you make a list, you can have a more efficient shopping trip. If you forget what you needed, or you don't write it down, or you don't make a plan, you have to go back and forth to the grocery store a few times. It's going to cost more money in transportation. Maybe you didn't buy that great big giant box of cereal that you really needed. You have to go back and buy another small box. You'll lose your economies of scale and you lose your efficiency and your profits. In distribution and supply chain management, accurate forecasts can help prevent something called the bullwhip effect. The bullwhip effect is called the bullwhip effect because it's similar to how a small action can create a very large reaction. When you crack a bullwhip, you flick your wrist, and that small flick of the wrist goes down the bullwhip and creates a sonic boom at the end, which is the crack that you hear when you snap a whip. That applies to supply chain because if you have inaccurate forecasts, or if you make assumptions or you have estimates, those can propagate down the supply chain and cause massive inefficiencies with increased storage, increased transportation, and everything else that can help reduce your profit margins. So I'll give you an example. In my company, say a grocery store wants to buy 100 cases of popcorn. We're pretty risk averse, and we're also pretty antiquated in our procurement strategies, frankly. Trying to change that, but it's not quite there yet. So we go out and we want to buy 120, just to cover that extra 20% that we think the customer is going to need. We can get a better buying deal if we go ahead and buy 150. So we go ahead and buy 150. It's easier to manage full pallets through the warehouse than partial pallets. We think that's better for our operational costs. Our customer goes to their supplier, the raw material, the popcorn supplier, and they think that they can get a better deal by ordering 200 cases worth of raw materials. They think that they can take a little discount on selling it to us. We'll buy it at the lower price. They've increased their volume. They still have achieved some margin, and we feel like everybody's gained in the end. The 200 cases get to us. We go ahead and take the volume discount. We try to convince the customer to take it at a cheaper rate. All of this has happened because everybody thinks that they're doing the right thing for efficiency within the supply chain, but it boils down to the only demand that really existed was for that 100 cases. And because we didn't trust the customer's number, our intelligence with the customer wasn't good enough, our intelligence with our vendor wasn't good enough, on down the supply chain, that's introduced extra inventory, which we know is one of the wastes that can happen in a lean environment that recognizes inventory as being a waste. All of this has happened because of inaccurate forecasts. A small error that's occurred from our customer to us has propagated down the supply chain and led us to purchase double the inventory that we had anticipated. Somebody's going to get stuck with that product, and it's going to introduce long-term costs overall. And then when we go back and look at the analytics for our order history, both with us and our vendor and our customer to us, none of those numbers are going to reflect the actual demand from anybody's end, and therefore we're not going to know what the market can really bear, and our future ability to make decisions will be impaired.